The Last of Us Part 2 is a sequel to the original 2013 game The Last of Us. The story follows an older middle-aged man named Joel and a teenage girl named Ellie as they adventure through the country in a post-apocalyptic world full of zombies known as infected, thugs and gangs, as well as other obstacles and people that they meet along the way. This video is a narration summary, and also a story recap for people and players that want to know what happened in the first game as well as just to remember what happened in general. And what better game to talk about than one that involves a widely spread and societal changing virus than right now. This video will only cover the main storyline and not anything in the DLC story left behind, as I hope to only cover the main story and as much of it as possible without distraction. The story begins in a suburban household at night, as a girl named Sarah Miller waits for her dad Joel Miller to come home for his birthday present, a new watch. Sarah then falls asleep and wakes up to find Joel isn't home, and that strange things are happening near their home and on the news. Sarah finds Joel running inside their home to get their gun as one of the neighbors barges in looking aggressively insane. Joel shoots the neighbor dead and takes Sarah to a car outside with their brother/Uncle Tommy driving away from their home and the neighborhood. They see trouble all around them during the drive as they make their way to town, but unfortunately get into a car crash along the way. Joel and Sarah rush to the safety of a government-controlled sanctioned area while Tommy fends off any threats along the way. They're stopped by a guard with orders to kill any civilians on sight, as they don't know who's infected. The guard shoots at them, and after Joel stumbles and falls away from the guard, Tommy reappears and shoots the guard. The scene ends with Sarah crying out in pain as she dies from a gunshot wound, as Joel cries and holds her in her arms. The game progresses to 20 years later from this point. The hostiles talked about earlier are known in this world as infected. The virus that has impacted them as well as the world has been classified as the cordyceps brain infection, CBI for short. A fungus that grows all over the brain, destroys most of it, and causes the host to become hostile and aggressive. The virus is transferred via bites, scratches, cuts, and other abrasions to the body, as well as the breathing in of the virus's fungal spores grown from the host. The virus can also affect the host depending on how long the host has been infected. Initially, those who are infected simply become aggressive and hostile, known as runners. Soon they become stalkers after a few weeks in which the fungus has shown more visible growth on the host. Prolonged exposure for at least a year causes infected to become clickers, infected of the fungus growing on their body and covering their faces to the point they can only see via echolocation by clicks and listening closely to their surroundings. The fourth and final stage for infected to reach is called a bloater. It is the longest stage to reach, taking a couple years to fully develop. It's also the most dangerous, as the fungus has grown all over the body in thick layers, and acts as a shield for the bloater against heavy attacks including shotguns and rifles. This form throws spores around as well as having the incredible strength to rip the victim completely apart. There is no known cure or treatment for this disease. The only two options for the victims are either to wait and become one of the infected, or end it themselves. Because of the virus, the rest of the world has not progressed in the best way as a result. The government has sectioned off different parts of the country to keep control of those who are not infected and the rest of the world via quarantine zones. Anyone found to test positive with the virus within these zones is immediately killed on the spot. Food is now being rationed with extremely low supplies given by ration cards, and often finding animals such as rats, squirrels, and anything else to hunt down and eat. There are those who also oppose the government and want to do things their own way. This militia group called themselves the Fireflies, and they're one of the last groups that hope to find a cure for the infection. While they've been revealed to be stationed all over the United States of America, they're also rapidly decreasing in numbers, as their fights with the government militia group grow, and they're struggling to keep up with other rebel groups such as Hunters, a more brutal and aggressive rebel group only out to survive and take what they need and want from anyone they can find. These are just some of the many obstacles and challenges in-game and brought in the main story. Within the game, it's also important to note that you can use different tools and items to craft weapons, use pills and plants to improve abilities, and it's also highly recommended to stock up on ammo as you can quickly run out of it, especially depending if you're playing on different modes such as grounded difficulty. One of the biggest abilities in the game is the ability to listen around you and hear where enemies are for sneak attacks and stealth kills. Back to the main story. It's now been 20 years later from that day. Joel is now working with his partner Tess in smuggling guns, pharmaceutical drugs, and other equipment into their quarantine zone in exchange for ration cards and other valuable goods. Tess tells Joel about how she made a drug deal, but then was later attacked by some men sent by an old accomplice of theirs, Robert. While making their way to see them, they encounter more of Robert's men and shootouts break out. They finally corner Robert and apprehend him. He explains that he sold a stash of guns that belonged to them to the Fireflies to pay off a debt. Tess kills Robert, and almost immediately they're met by Marlene, the leader, or Queen Firefly as Joel calls her. Though mildly injured, Marlene tells them they can have the guns in exchange for smuggling something out of the city. After some walking, they stumble upon a young teen girl that knows Marlene, named Ellie. Marlene explains that they need to smuggle her out of the quarantine zone to the Capitol building of the city, where a small group of Fireflies will await to retrieve her. Tess agrees, but only if she can see the stash she was promised, and Marlene agrees to take her as she needs to get patched up anyway, leaving Joel and Ellie to wait for them until nightfall. Marlene also explains that she knows Joel through Tommy, as he was once a Firefly that has since left the cause as well as left behind Joel. Joel and Ellie then walk to the rendezvous point, where Ellie explains that her mom knew Marlene, and that the reason they're smuggling her is a secret. Nightfall comes, and Tess comes back to confirm the gun stash and to help Ellie with Joel. While they're smuggling her, Joel and Tess speculate what exactly is so important about Ellie that she needs to be smuggled out of the city. All three of them then try to sneak quietly past guards controlling the zone perimeters, before getting apprehended by 2 guards. The guards quickly begin to scan them for signs of infection, but before they get on Ellie, she stabs one of them, and the 3 quickly overpower and kill the guards. The scanner reveals that Ellie's infected, but she hasn't turned. She shows them her scratch mark and explains that it's 3 weeks old. Joel and Tess are hesitant, but they must quickly run as more guards show up after hearing the gunshots from their fight. After they escape out, Ellie explains to them that the Fireflies have a quarantine zone with a lab and doctors still trying to find the cure, meaning that Ellie could be the key to being humanity's last hope. After some thought and hesitation, Joel agrees to continue with Tess as they travel through the desolate city to get to the Capitol building. They encounter infected along the way, but clues that Fireflies were there and that they're on the right path. They also find shallow water, and Ellie mentions she can't swim just in case she needs their help. When they finally get to the Capitol building, they find the group of Fireflies dead inside. Tess, being desperate, scrambles to find any clues, but find none other than Ellie mentioning that their lab is being out west. Tess and Joel then argue about the situation, before Tess reveals that she's been infected an hour ago on their journey. Tess then exclaims to Joel that he needs to find Tommy so they can send Ellie to the Fireflies. Joel hesitantly agrees as more guards appear, and Tess decides that she'll end her suffering on her own terms in a shootout with the guards. Joel and Ellie then leave the building and head to the subway to avoid the guards. The subway is shown to have spores and fungus growing, furthering proof that Ellie is infected, as they fight off more guards with Joel wearing a gas mask and Ellie just casually breathing in the spores. Once out of the subway, they stop for a bit while Joel explains some ground rules about the two together if they're going to continue traveling, including not mentioning her condition and staying close to him at all times. He then tells her that he knows an old acquaintance that owes him a favor and might help them out. On their way to the acquaintance, Joel and Ellie start to bond a little. They then encounter a few of the acquaintances known as Bill, homemade traps against infected and trespassers. One of Bill's traps hangs Joel up by his ankles as infected attack him and Ellie. Ellie gets him down just as Bill comes to their aid. They escape to a safe room as Bill, being paranoid, starts interrogating Joel and Ellie on why they're there. Joel explains that they need a car to make it to the Fireflies. Bill, with great hesitation, grudgingly agrees to help Joel out to find gear near a badly infected part of his small town to put together a car for them. After getting more guns and supplies, Bill explains that a military caravan car drove past town a few months ago and got overrun by infected. A military truck plowed near the high school of the town, and Bill explains that if they can get the battery to that truck, he can fix them up a car for them. While going to the high school, they are attacked by infected surrounding them. Bill discovers that the truck's battery is gone and they try to escape out of the school only to confront more infected and a bloater. They kill it and escape to a suburban household. Joel and Bill then discuss the missing battery and argue about Joel's mission only for Bill to get distracted by a hanging corpse. Bill then explains that the corpse, which has bite marks, was named Frank and used to be his old partner, hinting at an old love interest between the two. Ellie then discovers a working pickup truck with the battery in the household. Bill then decides to jumpstart the car via pushing it down the road of the neighborhood, with Bill and Joel pushing and Ellie driving. With infected on their tails, they barely escape and drive off. They stop and drop Bill off the safer part of his town, with him telling Joel they are finally even before driving off. Joel and Ellie then drive towards where they suspect Tommy might be, before they're ambushed and almost killed in a car crash by hunters. They kill their attackers and then rush to safety in one of the city buildings. They discover the bandits have been attacking people and possibly even eating them. Joel explains that he used to be a hunter and he knows what they're capable of, including killing innocent and quarantine militia alike. They locate a bridge from afar and decide to proceed from there. As they continue on, they encounter more hunters along the way. Ellie asks Joel for a gun in case she needs it, but Joel refuses to give her one. During a struggle in which a hunter almost kills Joel, Ellie shoots a hunter dead. Joel is at first annoyed at her, but then later gives her a rifle and teaches her to aim as they encounter a small group later in the city. Joel tells her he appreciated the save from earlier, and they take the group all out, later giving her a gun for her own protection after all. They soon find a mini tank driven by hunters used to kill 2 innocent bystanders being chased by the tank. As they continue, they discover 2 boys, one young adult and one around Ellie's age, named Henry and Sam. Ellie and Henry decide for the 4 of them to travel together as they head for a safe house Henry nearby knows about. As they travel more, Sam finds a toy he wants to keep in a play school setting, but Henry forbids him as it's not a necessity. All 4 arrive at the safe house, and Henry explains to Joel that he and Sam want to escape past the hunters guarding the exit to the city to meet with a group of theirs outside the city. He tells Joel that he wants to join the Fireflies out west too, and that he knows of an abandoned military radio station that their group is supposed to meet up with the next day. At night, they all move as the hunters guarding the exit to the city are down to a few numbers. As they take out the hunters, they quickly try to avoid the mini-tank driving their way. Ellie, Sam, and Henry try to climb aboard some cargo trucks, but the ladder they climb breaks just as Ellie climbs up. Henry and Sam abandon Joel, but Ellie stays behind as Joel and Ellie rush to escape the mini-tank firing at them. They quickly run to a destroyed bridge and jump into the rushing waters just as the tank almost catches up to them. Joel is knocked out by the rocks, and he discovers Henry and Sam have met back up with them later on. At first furious, Joel threatens to kill Henry, but Henry explains that Joel and Ellie would have survived, but Henry and Sam wouldn't have. Joel comes down, and they all proceed on. The 4 of them head into the nearby sewers as a shortcut. There they find an abandoned safe point within the sewers and infected. Later, Joel accidentally triggers a safety gate separating Henry and Ellie from himself and Sam. They all regroup and barely escape out the sewers as clickers and more infected chase them down. As they get closer to the radio station, the group passes a nearby neighborhood, and Joel tells Henry that he knows Tommy was last heard of somewhere in Wyoming. They are all soon ambushed by a hidden sniper in one of the houses and another group of hunters. With the help of the other 3, Joel sneaks off and takes down the sniper, just as the mini-tank from before reappears and tries to gun down Henry, Sam, and Ellie. Joel snipes the tank into exploding, but not before a horde of infected begin to attack the 3. Joel tries to snipe as many as possible, but the horde is way too big, and they escape again through a wooden fence away from the neighborhood. The group then rests in a quiet building they found as Joel, Henry, and Ellie all unwind and relax together. Henry confides in Joel that he doesn't think their group is going to show up. Ellie comes to check on Sam and he asks her questions about fear and being alone. They talk about and debate if the people the infected used to be are still aware of who they've become, before Ellie sadly tells Sam that the infected are no longer people and that they're beyond saved. Before Ellie leaves to sleep with Joel and Henry, she gives Sam the toy he wanted from before. He throws it on the ground though as he doesn't care about it anymore. He rolls up his sleeve pants and reveals a scratch he received from earlier that day from one of the infected. Ellie awakens and goes to retrieve Sam for breakfast with the rest of the group, but Sam attacks her as he's turned. Joel almost shoots him, but Henry shoots the gun out of his hands and shoots Sam instead. Stricken with trauma about what he's just done, he points his gun at Joel and Ellie before deciding to shoot himself instead. A few months pass near the season of fall. Joel and Ellie are getting closer to finding Tommy. Along the way, Joel explains Tommy's struggles with how he wants to see the world versus what Joel and Marlene promised him when they last met him. The 2 travel past a dam before approaching the main water plant that's been fortified. They see guards, but thankfully Tommy's inside. Joel and Tommy reconcile, and Joel and Ellie meet Tommy's wife and the rest of the workers within the water plant. Tommy and the group he works with have converted the water plant and the dam into a fortress and a camp for themselves and their families. There they find they have horses, fresh water, and even working on using the dam for electricity, and have finally succeeded when Joel and Ellie arrived. Joel and Tommy talk in private about Ellie and his journey. Joel wants Tommy to take Ellie due to his connections with the Fireflies, but Tommy's purpose is now with the rest of the water plant group and the families that they have there. They fight for a bit before hunters arrive and start a shootout. The plant workers fend them off, but not without suffering some casualties themselves. Joel rushes to ensure Ellie's safety, and Tommy sees their interaction before deciding to take Ellie. Tommy and his wife argue a little bit about this decision before she reluctantly agrees. Before they can do anything else though, they found out that Ellie stole a horse and rode off away from the plant. Joel and Tommy ride off into the woods nearby to find her. They soon encounter a ranch and Joel finds Ellie inside. Joel and Ellie argue about going with Tommy before Ellie brings up Sarah, how Joel wants Ellie to be safer with Tommy, and how Ellie doesn't want anything to happen to Joel. Soon hunters come inside to attack them and the three kill them all off. The three ride back to the plant, but Joel decides to reconcile with Ellie and agrees to be the one to take her to the Fireflies with one of Tommy's horses. Tommy tells them that the lab is located within the University of Eastern Colorado, within a science building built like a mirror. Joel and Ellie talk, bond a little more, and ride all the way to the university. After searching, they encounter a few infected and clickers, and finish them all off, as well as finding a few monkeys that were roaming the inside and outside of the campus. They make their way to the mirror building, but find absolutely no one inside waiting for them. They find a few recorders and listen to one of the scientists talking about experiments they were conducting there. Turns out, they were experimenting on the monkeys, and the experiments kept failing, so the university wanted to terminate the monkeys. The scientist felt that it wasn't fair, and was trying to comfort one of the monkeys before getting bitten himself, therefore starting the virus, and the rest is history. Before the last recorder ends, Joel and Ellie hear that the Fireflies relocated to a hospital in Salt Lake City, continuing to find a cure. They're soon interrupted by hunters shooting at them. While Joel is able to take a few out, one gets the jump on him while on a balcony and the two fall on the ground below. The hunter is killed, but Joel is gravely injured as he's stabbed through the stomach with a steel bar from the wreckage of the building. Ellie and Joel desperately continue to fight their way out the building as more hunters come at them, but with Joel losing blood and losing consciousness by the minute, they arrive to their horse outside and ride off. After they ride for a bit to make sure they lose anyone else following, Joel collapses and passes out while Ellie desperately tries to keep him awake. Fast forward to winter. The area is covered in snow while it's shown Ellie is out hunting. She finds a deer and quietly searches for it. At this point, the player is now able to play as Ellie. She is able to shoot it dead with her bow and arrow and is about to skin it before being approached by two men. She arms herself as they request if they can get a portion of the deer. She agrees to trade the meat for antibiotics, with one of the men staying with her and the other going to fetch the medicine. She requests the man staying to hand over his guns while they wait for the second man to come back. While they wait, they're attacked by clickers and infected. Ellie and the man shoot them as the man has his second gun with him. They also encounter a bloater and kill them all off. Afterwards, the man tries to ask Ellie about herself as he tells her about the rumors he's heard about a crazy man traveling with the little girl. The other man comes back armed, but the man known as David tells him not to shoot. Ellie grabs the medicine, while the two men stay behind as she rides off with her horse. She rides off into a house, where inside in the basement, Ellie treats Joel with the antibiotics as his wound is healed, but he's in no condition to move or go anywhere. Ellie rests with Joel for a bit, but she hears noises and finds out she was followed. To avoid the men finding Joel, Ellie rides off and distracts the men into chasing after her. They shoot her horse dead though, and she quickly runs off and fights off more, but not long after she's subdued and knocked out by David. Ellie wakes up in a cage as one of the men appear to be cutting off the limbs off of a human body for food and parts. David approaches her with food, deer meat, he assures her, while he talks to her about her name and joining her group, and being very ominous and disturbing about it. Ellie breaks one of his fingers and tries to escape, but fails. David then warns her that her fate by morning would be nothing more than tiny pieces. Joel wakes up and is still in pain, but manages to bring himself up and goes out to look for Ellie. He encounters David's men looking for her hideout and shoots them down. He's ambushed at one point by two of them, but manages to break loose from their grip, beat them both, and take them in for interrogation. Joel ties them both, beats them, and interrogates them for information on Ellie and where she is. One of them tells him she's become David's newest pet, and the exact location on where David and the rest of the group is. He slowly kills them as he heads off to find her. Ellie awakens to David and the other man holding her up to the table to be chopped up. She bites David, and before they can chop her up, she tells them she's infected and shows them her scratch. In a moment of confusion with David worrying about his new bite, Ellie kills the other man and escapes from David as she tries to make her way out of the town their group is located in. After killing a few of them off, Ellie encounters David again in a restaurant building, and a boss battle begins with Ellie trying to stab David as he tried to shoot her or stab her with his machete. This fight is made especially difficult as David is capable of using the same listening ability as the player. Outside, Joel fights more men off as he finds the bodies they've been stalking and using for food as well as the burning building. After Ellie stabs David one last time, they get into a struggle and David overpowers her as he gets on top of her and begins to choke her. Ellie desperately searches for a weapon and finds David's machete, and after one quick cut to his arm, begins chopping angrily and in shock at his body as Joel finds her, stops her, and comforts her as she cries in his arms, and they both get away from the burning building and the town. Fast forward again to the spring. Joel and Ellie have arrived at Salt Lake City and are only a few blocks away from the hospital. Joel reminisces about the nice day, and how he would teach Ellie guitar after they were done with their journey. As they walk, Ellie seems a bit off and in her own train of thought as they get closer. While in one of the buildings, Ellie spots something, and as Joel races off after her, they find a herd of giraffes nonchalantly walking through the city. They take in the view, and after a bit, Joel asks Ellie if she's really willing to do this, and hints that he's having second thoughts about it all. Ellie responds that their entire journey couldn't have been for nothing, and that she wants to do this. But the two agree that after they're done, the two will stay together and go back to Tommy's where they'll both be happier and safer. As they continue walking, Ellie decides to give Joel a picture of Sarah and himself that she stole from Tommy's. Later, they both encounter infected and kill them off while going into a flooded subway. Inside, they try to be careful, but Ellie and Joel end up being swept away in a current. After swimming and finding her passed out, Joel emerges on the other side of the subway and tries to resuscitate her, but not before being knocked out by guards nearby. Joel wakes up in the hospital and finds Marlene and another Firefly in the room with him. He immediately asks about Ellie, but Marlene assures him she's fine and waiting in another room. Marlene explains that she's lost everything, trying to get to the hospital as well, but seeing Joel and Ellie there gave her hope. He asks to see her, but Marlene says she's being prepped for surgery. With Joel confused, she explains that the cordyceps inside of Ellie have mutated. If they can remove the growth inside her, they can study it and reverse engineer it into a possible vaccine and cure. However, after Joel reconfirms with Marlene that the cordyceps grow all over the brain, the moment of realization hits him, when it's possible that they could lose Ellie along the process. He begins to argue but is quickly subdued by the other guard, as Marlene tells him this isn't his choice, and that he is to be escorted out the building at gunpoint. Joel and the guard begin to walk out, but Joel quickly overpowers the guard and forces him to reveal where Ellie is. Joel shoots the guard dead and fights his way to where the surgery is about to start. Here the player is given the choice to kill only a single doctor or all three that are in the room with him. The choice doesn't really matter, as Joel escapes with Ellie in a surgery gown and unconscious regardless. He is chased by more guards but makes his way to an elevator. He heads down to the garage of the hospital where he's confronted by Marlene. Marlene tries to reason with Joel at gunpoint, and even holds her arm out as a sign that if he leaves Ellie with them, he can walk out of there peacefully. Afterwards, Joel is seen driving away from the hospital and the city, as Ellie wakes in the back seat. She asks what's happened. Joel lies to her and tells her that she's not the only one immune. The Fireflies have found more people with immunity to the infection, and that they stopped looking for a cure. Flashing back to the confrontation with Marlene as she has her arms out, Joel shoots her with a gun he kept hidden in his hand. As he sets Ellie in the back seat of one of the cars, Marlene pleads with Joel to let her go. Joel shakes his head, telling her she'd only follow them, and shoots her in the head. Joel and Ellie drive back to Tommy's, as Joel reminisces about Sarah, and talks about how she and Ellie would have probably been good friends. Before going straight to the water plant, however, Ellie and Joel share one last exchange with each other.
Back in Boston? Back when I was bitten? I wasn't alone. My best friend was there. And she got bit too. We didn't know what to do. So, she says, let's just wait it out. You know, we can be all poetic and just lose our minds together. I'm still waiting for my turn.
Ellie.
Her name was Riley, and she was the first to die. And then it was Tess. And then Sam.
None of that is on you.
You don't understand.
I struggled for a long time with surviving. And you... No matter what, you keep finding something to fight for. Now, I know that's not what you want to hear right now.
Swear to me. Swear to me that everything that you said about the Fireflies is true.
I swear.